r/AskReddit by Reddit. Cruise ship workers of Reddit. What was the biggest oh crap moment on the boat that luckily passengers didn't find out about at all? One time I was on a cruise, and a few cabins down a man and woman who were cheating on their wife and husband, respectively, got super drunk and fell over the edge of their balcony from really high up. It was at night too. The whole cruise ship stopped once it was reported, and it took like an entire day to search for them. Apparently the man had his jeans or something, because he had inflated them somehow, and they were floating holding them. They reported that they were stung by multiple jellyfish, and were super cold the whole time. That must have been the scariest, most terrible 18 hours of their lives. Ship just arrived in Whittier, Alaska, the port for Anchorage, and an elderly passenger dropped dead while walking down the gangway. A conflict ensues between the port security and the ship's medical team. The port security didn't want the ship's medical team to get involved because it technically happened off the ship and the local authorities had jurisdiction. There really was no saving the guy, but the ship's medical team at least wanted to try. But the local authorities wouldn't even allow the chief medical officer to start CPR. The coroner had a 6-hour ETA, so the port authorities bagged up the body and stuffed it in an X-ray machine storage container in port, guarded by local police, until the coroner could arrive to take the body to Anchorage. The wife of the deceased continued on to finish the vacation for the 7-day rail trip to Denali. It was a 14-day gimmick, 7 days at sea, 7-day scenic rail trip. My understanding was the cruise line calmed her entire vacation, arranged for the remains to be returned home at no cost to her, and provided a personal escort/assistant for the remainder of her vacation. I used to be a crew member, and one time a guy working at the front desk jumped overboard after a crew party. He was found a few hours later by the Coast Guard, and everybody was asked to be discreet in order to keep the cruise running smooth, and everything was fine until the captain came on the PA and said we were delayed because a crew member jumped overboard. Then the madness begins. Rumors appear out of nowhere, and the rest of the cruise was pretty much guests asking what happened the whole time. A lot of crap happens on board. I could write a book, maybe even more than one. Another time a guy committed suicide in his cabin, and his family was on board, including a little girl, but this time it didn't leak to the guests. I saw the family as they were being escorted to the security office. Felt so bad for them. A friend of mine got fired for getting wasted, and starting peeing all over his cabin while the security guys were there to take care of him. He spent the night in the little jail on board before being dumped the next day in whatever port we were. Also, every time we had ice cream at the crew restaurant, people would say it was because they had to empty the freezer to put a dead body. I provide software and services for most of the major cruise lines and spend a lot of time cruising. On the new builds is when you see a lot of crazy stuff happening. When a brand new ship is built they have to go through what's called sea trials. This is a full systems check for multiple reasons, biggest ones being safety, emissions, and engine/navigation testing. This happens without passengers, and a lot of stuff breaks usually. They will list the ship, lean it all the way to one side, as hard as they can, and hold position, while doing a circle or figure 8 pattern in the water. I had a 600-pound wine cooler, fully stocked, full face down about 12 inches away from me, while installing a PC at a bar. It sounded like a stick or dynamite exploding from the pressure of all the bottles hitting and simultaneously breaking. I froze staring at it, and as I started to come out of the initial shock, 4 security crew members came running around the corner, no one else around except me, and about $10K in broken wine, and the cooler wasn't cheap either. I just stuck my hands in the air and slowly exited the scene. I'm pretty sure if I was standing 1 foot to the right it wouldn't have been pretty for me. Found out the yard workers forgot to bolt it down, as per protocol. Oops. One story that comes to mind with passengers, travel agents and family was the first sailing out of the yard. The ship can hold about 4,500 passengers. She's a big girl and has 5 or 6 massive engines to power it. About 3 hours into the sail away I heard a loud thump and massive vibrations all around. I was in an empty restaurant and saw plates and cups crashing to the ground from the vibrations. My first thought is to always see how the crew reacts. If they are calm, you can stay calm. If they freak out, you better start moving. I could see some concern, but they continued on with their business, so I followed their lead and continued doing my work too. About 3 to 4 hours after that, another loud thump and even more vibrations, then silence. After speaking with a few crew members, found out we lost 2 engines on the initial incident, and now we just lost the rest. Whatever the reason was, we lost complete propulsion and this beast of a ship was going to go wherever the ocean wanted it to. Passengers were notified that we will be running late, but to continue having fun and drinks were on the house. No other info was given. Smart to avoid panic. About 12 hours later, a helicopter was seen, early AM hours, above us, dropping down crates of engine parts, and a short time after that, we had propulsion again, and passengers had no idea why we were delayed and didn't seem to care. All of the computer systems run on Windows 7, including all of the automation in the machinery space, security system, fire detection system etc. When Windows updates, it will restart the computers, as it does with a normal desktop. Unfortunately, it can also take out every computer at the same time and we are flying blind until it finishes. People may be more worried to hear that there is a hole in the hull, yet they are actually fairly common occurrences in older ships and easily plugged. Fires happen occasionally. The most terrifying was a crankcase explosion. The fire suppression systems are good at extinguishing them quickly enough though, so they are not even a concern to the crew unless Windows is updating at the time. Edit. A crankcase explosion doesn't mean the engine is in pieces. Oil mist inside the crankcase explodes, and the resulting blast is pushed out through the blast doors. Also, the fire suppression system is independent. That was a joke. The monitoring system is Windows based and just means we can't see what sensors or which sprinklers have been activated. The speed and fueling controls on an engine are mechanical and the local control is pneumatic, so keeping it running isn't a concern. All of the auxiliary systems are controlled by the computer system and are passed into local control and controlled by the watchkeeper if and when it occurs. A passenger went missing and nobody could find him for a couple days. It turns out he committed suicide in the fan room, so everyone had been sucking dead guy air for a while. We definitely kept that one under wraps. That's the only one that the crew kept secret, but I have some crazy / funny stories about working on ships. I was a musician and one time a guest entertainer, a fly-on act, who joins the ship for a cruise to perform one show. Thought he was ducking Freddie Mercury and threw out his digipack CDs like ninja stars into a completely dark house. It ended up clocking some old woman a half an inch below the eye and she had to go to medical. The husband wrote the cruise director a very threatening letter basically saying my wife almost went blind, so I strongly suggest you give us a free steak dinner. I would usually be hungover, so I'd drink during the day to get over it. I'd go out in port and get smashed and come back. On turnaround days where a new group of passengers arrive, we have to take attendance and do a life jacket demonstration. I was so drunk one time I threw up in the stairwell as passengers were coming in. I somehow didn't get fired or even reprimanded, even though everything I puked up was straight liquid and smelled caustically like booze. We all have small cabins in close proximity to each other. We usually keep a spare key under our nameplates in case we lock ourselves out by accident. One night I woke up to a fellow musician who didn't have a shirt on peeing into my Worcester basket in the corner. He was so drunk he thought my cabin was his, and he got the key from behind the nameplate and just decided to pee into the closest hole. Heard this one from a friend who worked the cruise ships in the 80s. So it was one of those mainly senior citizen cruises, and our older gentleman passed away while lying on one of the outside sunds. Luckily, one of the officers was first to notice and quickly called over to South American staff members, whose English was less than perfect, and he tells them, get rid of that quick, before anybody sees it. The officer meanwhile tracks down the gentleman's partner, and after consoling her through her grief, she asks to see the body. He takes her to the refrigerator, where they keep people who pass away, and it's empty. He calls the ship's doctor, who knows nothing about any body. Now furious, the officer hunts down the 2 staff members who moved the body. He finally finds them and goes ballistic. Where the hell is that body? They look at each other and one of says, "You say get rid, we get rid." The officer is now confused. "What are you talking about?" In answer, the man makes a throwing over the railing motion. In hindsight, I wish I'd asked my friend what they told his wife. Thank you for watching Reddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more r/AskReddit videos. Share your stories in the comments section below.